Okay, show of hands. How many of you have seen a presentation I've made either in person or a stream online? Great, cool. So it's a relatively new audience. Gets me excited. Thank you all for coming. It's rainy in Seattle, which everyone's surprised about, and we're talking about future esports and interactive streaming. My company is Genvid. Genvid was started more than 3 years ago now by 4 co-founders from the game space, and we set out to create the tools to let game developers really interact with their viewing audience in a compelling and interactive way. And from 4 people in no office, we've gone to close to 40 people in 4 offices, and a lot of that has to do with the the development, the amazing work that my team has done, but moreover the feedback we've gotten from game developers who are either existing esports runners or creating what we believe to be the kind of the future of the gaming industry in many ways. What we're really well known for, I think, is creating monetization layers on top of existing titles like Counter-Strike. And through being able to interact with very big platforms like Twitch, we've been able to create an interesting niche for ourselves where we're able to be the kind of interaction tool of choice for developers who are trying to reach their audiences. I'll speak a little bit later about why this is important and why we're doing what we're doing. Today's talk is not meant to be a marketing pitch for Genvid. It tends to operate a lot around developers that have used our technology because we believe what they're doing is cool. But what I've tried to do is set up some constructs, some frameworks that you can take as hints if you're in the esports space or in the game developer space about what it means to be a viewer, because I think we can all agree that esports, if nothing else, is a viewer-dominated market, and we're creating experiences for viewers, so we need to be starting to think of things from a viewer perspective. And this is a little bit of a challenge for developers because developers don't see viewers as their consumer, they see players as a consumer, and this is kind of a paradigm shift. I'll save you the video of Emmett Shear talking about Genvid. We see games and traditional media coming to a point of convergence. And what does this mean? Games have always been on the forefront when it comes to 3 main things: business model, technology, and content. And it's really the hardest domain to be in because your users are the most demanding when it comes to their pocketbook, and when it comes to their time, and when it comes to their attention. Traditional media is coming to see that games are so advanced that when it comes to linear content, when it comes to pretty much anything, traditional sports, or advertising, where engagement and monetization and content are, they're kind of at crises. They're seeing that the game industry is a really interesting place to start, let's say, not necessarily copying, but adopting best practices. And so game developers have a unique perch to address the viewership that we see here. But in order to do that, we need to find the fact, or realize the fact that the current offering is not one that's viewer-friendly. And what I'd like to do is kind of juxtapose it against the physical world and the experience that have co-evolved with over time with things like sports. So for example, going from the left to the right here, I apologize if the text is a little small. We've charted the kinds of experiences and monetization and kind of audience size from left to right. So first you have the player. If you're doing traditional sports, the player is not your main monetization cohort, right? There are people who are playing the game, but you're not necessarily making money by selling people more footballs. Right, you're getting them in a stadium and doing things with them. The next level of monetization and experience is the participant, the people who feel engaged enough to go spend their hard-earned time and money in the stadium to have a more kind of immersed experience and have a closer connection to what they're watching. And then actually when you get to the people at home on the right, the viewers, you have the biggest paychecks. These are broadcast rights. These are sponsorships, right? And what we've done is we've created created an entire spectrum of experience from player to participant to viewer, where each component leads the next. If you don't have a good player experience, you don't get enough people to play the game, to the sport. If you don't have a good enough participant experience, you don't get various stakeholders, including ad buyers, et cetera, involved. And then you definitely don't get enough of a viewership around that. Let's just juxtapose that against the game space, which is kind of digital space. For now, games are really about player and only about player, right? And it's not really about converting players into any kind of monetization other than the act of play. They're not creating necessarily, from a developer's perspective, content for other people until it reaches a high enough point where you have a lot of people who are playing the game, and then maybe they want to watch each other for best practices, right? And then we have a gap in the middle. We'll talk about why I put this here, because I still think that the participant in-stadium experience for games is not really there. And you have the viewer experience, and people are watching things on Twitch and YouTube, and there's no real kind of continuum here. And why is that? That's mainly because the developer doesn't care about the viewer. The games are not created for spectating. Spectating itself, if you think about how the spectator build of the game, or the spectator mode of the game is done, it's usually the dev build of the game that is just there for tests and everything until the very end, before the game ships or before it goes live. And then all of the, how shall I say it, all of the features of it are pretty much cut off, and it's shipped as a spectator build, right? You don't have God mode, you can't go everywhere anymore. And why is that? Because devs don't want you spectating the game, they want you playing the game. And if you're spending too much time in the spectator build of the game, that means you're probably not very good at the game, and they'd rather do better matchmaking to make sure that you as a player are enjoying their game as it's meant to be done. And that means that the spectator experience, of which all of esports is built on, and I think you're seeing some innovation in this space right now, is one where we don't understand what's going on if we're not a player of the game. And it's kind of unfair, because we're holding esports to a standard that other sports, I think Chopper mentioned it earlier, didn't have this same kind of comparison, because, for example, baseball co-evolved the spectating experience with the player experience over 80 years. Right? We're not talking about what we need to do in 1 year there. But what's important is, because these are spectator-driven businesses, we started thinking about it from the spectator's perspective, and we started creating spectator-centric value. And developers are uniquely capable of doing that. So what we need to be doing, and I think developers are starting to wake up to this right now, is think of instead of this forever going on debate of, do we get more players, or do we try to make things more mainstream by having my mother, who's never played Overwatch, be able to watch a stream on ESPN, because that's going to be where everything is for the traditional viewers. We have to start thinking of more interactivity, and we have to think about the fact that other sports, other large spectating businesses co-evolved with the kind of broadcasts that were capable at the time. So you have radio, you have black and white television, you have color television, and you have to think about how other sports co-evolved with that over time. You had live commentating, then you had the ability to show the match on television, then you had the ability to do digital overlays baked into it so that you could have more engagement, right? And we do ourselves a disservice if we don't think of the broadcast medium as something that can make a difference, and I'll show you what I mean. And if we do this, we no longer focus only on players. We have a whole spectrum of viewers, going from player to interactive viewers to spectators, people who are, as you go from smaller to larger, you have, again, more ability to monetize, but also less kind of interest in the core feedback of the game. So one thing we've done is we ran the two, Genvid and what we worked with partners, including Twitch and others, we've run the premium pass for the last two Counter-Strike majors. Have any of you been customers of that premium product? Awesome. Great. I'd love to hear what you thought about it. For those of you who have not seen it, I think it's worth showing 15 seconds of someone from ESL talking about it, so I'll show it there.
If you want to watch this grand final with a little extra spice, you can do so. It's nice and easy to do. Just add _premium to the top URL bar, and it's just an interactive way for you to get more stats and other information. You can bring up the scoreboard at any time if you want to keep track of just how much fragging damage your favorite player is doing.
Okay, so I think that's kind of hard to understand, so let me show you quickly. For games like Counter-Strike, they have an unfair advantage because they've been around for so long that most of us have been ex-players of it, so we have an innate understanding of what's going on. But if we haven't watched for 1 or 2 seasons, we don't really know what the latest tactics are for a specific map, and we have the commentators going out of their way to tell us things, but we still probably don't understand. So one of the things that we worked on was the ability to, literally at any given point, be able to click on the overlay, find out what's going on in real time, be able to turn on and off scoreboards and see, literally what's happening in real time. And again, this is customized for each viewer. What we're showing this is now is live streaming on YouTube, but this works for Twitch, et cetera, as well. And it's these kind of experiences that we need if we want to expand viewership, right? It's not about people who have watched ever Counter-Strike, it's people who've watched recently. And the longer a game is in existence, the more ex-players you have, therefore the more potential viewers you have, right? I think there's a bit of a confusion. I don't think it's necessarily about bringing everyone who's never played the game into viewing your game. I think it's about bringing anyone who's ever played your game, viewing your game. So if I played Counter-Strike or CSGO 6 years ago, I need to be able to feel like I understand what's going on. And we spend a lot of time thinking about things like multiple camera angles and letting viewers follow the player of their choice. What we found is, and this is quite interesting because it depends on the tournament organizer, therefore the broadcaster, of what they want to do. We have 2 models, right? There's one where you give agency to the viewer. They can choose which camera they want to watch. And viewers like choice, but at the end of the day, it's pure Pareto. They want to watch the main broadcast channel because they want to watch what the commentators are talking about. And if they're watching someone else's channel who they love, they're unable to see that. So what we did is we created this kind of mini-map. So even if you're watching a player of your choice, you're able to kind of follow all players at any given time. And what we needed to do is we needed to give data that players didn't have access to. Things like literally what weapon all players have equipped at any given time. This is stuff that you wouldn't even get in the normal UI of the game because it's not relevant for players. In fact, players shouldn't be known what they have, when they have the knife, et cetera, because that kind of lets people cheat, right? And so if you look at the normal Counter-Strike UI, you only have the most expensive weapon that they have, not what they have in hand. And so we had to think from the ground up of what UI meant for spectators. Another example, let me see how I can present again. Omen of Sorrow. Any of you heard of Omen of Sorrow? It's a really cool game made by a studio named A1 based in Chile. They're one of Epic's kind of grant winners. They do a whole bunch of really cool games. And they made a game, PS4 launch exclusive, called Omen of Sorrow. And we were with them last year at EVO, where they debuted this interactive technology. Fighting games are really difficult to follow unless you are a player of the game, right? Because even if it looks like, everyone's seen a fighting game from the side, but we don't know what the tierage is, we don't know any of these things. We just watch it and people are moving really quickly. So what we did with them, in fact they did it, is they created a way that viewers could turn on and off hitboxes and see those in real time. You're able to toggle on and off the HUD, and they were even able to see the live player input. These are things that if I'm a new viewer of the game, I kind of want to understand what's going on. If I'm a seasoned player and I haven't played for 6 months and they've entered a new character, maybe this brings me back into the game. I'm one of those people who likes showing live demos because I think it makes sense. This is a live stream of Omen of Sorrow. You can turn on and off the HUD, see the input. And what A1 has done since is they've actually put, let me turn off the HUD so you can focus on it. They've put on live winning win-loss probability, which they call odds. So if you're a new viewer to this game and you've never played, and watching the HUD alone doesn't do it for you because you don't understand what the super meters are, you don't know what the tiering between these two characters are, this is the kind of thing that's going to change your life. And again, being able to turn on and off that hitbox in real time is going to make a big difference. And these, by the way, are the actual hitboxes from the game, and the developer took a lot of courage to actually expose those and stream those. I'm trying to make it so you don't know. Anyway. So, we need to start thinking about, when we're thinking about the viewer experience, being able to give data to that viewers want specifically for their demographic. Give them the cameras, let the market choose what that is. It's not that difficult to do. For the most part, people, when we think about esports, we're thinking about viewing outside of engine, right? Because it's the least friction. If I want to watch Counter-Strike, if I have to get a computer that can actually, good on Valve for creating a free version of their game, but I need to, therefore, if I want to watch it in GoTV, I need to have a computer that can, and an internet connection that can do all those things. Most people are going to go for the live streaming option. Bringing people, if there's a new map, whatever, we need to be able to tell the viewers what's going on. And towards the end, and this is quite important, I don't think you can create an esport, but I definitely think you can create a game that takes into consideration the fact that viewers are watching, and there is such a thing as home field advantage. And if you think of, as Chopper was saying earlier, we are living in a world where everything is global, right? And so if you can have some arenas that are geographically home and away, but if the real stadium is in engine or on a channel, we're going to have the creation of these digital audiences and digital stadium, and then one of the big reasons I go, or anyone goes to live sporting events, is to feel that your cheering impacts the outcome. Right now, all the games are designed to not do that, and there's a whole bunch of things that we believe the next generation of games will enable. So, I'll skip around a little bit. We do need to think about what the viewing experience is on a genre-by-genre basis, and it's not necessarily the same as the real-world analogs. So if we're watching a FGC, a fighting game, the people who are watching that aren't necessarily the people who are watching MMA. It's kind of a different genre. I would probably say it's fast-paced, tactics-focused, rather than anything that's a longer-term, strategy that tends to be for MMA. So it's more akin to something like badminton. So replays are super important. Be able to see multiple camera angles is super important, and those kind of things. MOBAs, action FPS, they tend to be more something. Think of it along the lines of a viewing experience of football. It's more team-oriented. You have quarterback. You have weird plays with blitzes here and there, but you have to think of it more like football. Strategy, CCG, we can cheat here. We can think of it as poker, pretty much. And so live stats are super important. Being able to see real-time deck information. Twitch has done some really cool things with Innkeeper here. And MMO, I like to think of it as golf. There's a long narrative going on. There's a story that's both in-game and extra-game. That's, the mental. And again, golf is very similar here. This golfer 8 years ago had this problem. Let's see a replay. These guilds are, there's some sort of showdown between these two guilds. There's a lot of long form here that MMOs can give you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have to think about viewer engagement and the types of interactivity that viewers can have and what those repercussions are for game design as well as monetization potential. So there are 3 tiers. First is informational. That's, again, giving viewers information, right, about what's going on. And so if you're watching an FPS, it's being able to click on something and find out what's going on. What is the player's inventory? Where are they on the map? Right, things that very high-level players already know. But not necessarily new viewers, right? And how can we monetize that? It's as easy as giving it away for free. If you see it as bringing more people and tutorializing them into what your game is so that they get energized and want to play themselves, that's fine. You can get it sponsored if you're a big enough game for it, or if you are really big and you have your own kind of paywall, you can have a paywall behind it. Information is already in the game, so this isn't really the hardest. This is the easiest thing to do from a design perspective. It's more about identifying the kind of data that you want to be exposing to viewers, and again, putting that in a way that is native to your game. Next is customizable, and this is the idea that you have different interests groups watching your game and interacting with your game and giving them each a native experience. And so what does that mean? So it could be something like different cameras. It could be something different languages. Right now, whenever we're watching esports, we're actually being segmented, right? This is the Korean channel. This is the English channel, right? And that might be great if it's a home and away sentiment, and the shoutcasters, like in baseball, are saying something that is more akin to a specific geography. But if it's literally just understanding what's going on in the localization perspective, just have UI that's custom to that, and it's just simple as a drop-down. These are just websites over video, right? We can do these things. Monetization is pretty much the same thing. Sponsorship is, I think it's just super simple to sell these things to sponsors. You can track engagement because it's literally, you're tracking people's engagement. And this is a little bit more of a lift when it comes to design. And because you need to identify, what are the interest areas, who are the people watching, what language do they want. If you're going to have multiple cameras, is it all players? This is hard if you're doing a battle royale. Right? Do you want to be offering 100 channels plus the broadcast? Not necessarily. Maybe you're doing squads. This is game specific. And last but not least, and this is what people think of first, but what I've addressed last is influence, which is viewers literally dictating some of the game state outcome based on their input, right? And this is something like cheering, and the players can hear you cheer. Or it's something like literally putting in something in the airdrop and sending it to, this is the Hunger Games mentality everyone gets into. I think, why do it in terms of monetization? I think it's clear why you'd want to do it, because you can now start selling things to viewers in terms of digital goods, right? And it can change the output of the game. It's the most difficult thing to do in a game design perspective, right? Because now the viewer is an element of your game. But there are lots of things that we take for granted here that we could replace with viewer input. Things that are RNG based, things that are scripted, right? And it's not necessarily having viewers dictate the outcome, but having viewers give an input that in and of itself could be the seed for the RNG, and therefore you've had some kind of emergent, interactivity there. And so the more you go on the influence spectrum, the more you have co-creation of new game experiences where it's the player and the audience kind of interplaying with each other. And I have tons of examples of some developers who are thinking about this, and I can show you them at my booth, but I'm running out of time, and I'll let you go from there. So Blitzfreak, really cool, Japan-based 3v3 VR game. It's cross-platform. Viewers were able to throw bombs at these people as they're running around this like crazy, urban landscape. They're also able to cheer for them, and based on who got the most cheering, they were able to actually hear the cheers, and actually drops of items were being sent to people with certain cheers. So that was cool. Space Sweeper is a really crazy Japanese indie game where viewers are able to actually. Dave, can I borrow 2 minutes?
We're already 10 minutes late.
Okay. Well, come see me. I will show you. I have a really cool trailer that shows all these things. And let me get to my key takeaways. What I see esports as is the first, the shot across the bow with developers seeing that there's an audience for their game. And the more competitive the game is, the more it becomes a traditional esport, and you start creating an awesome viewer experience around that. It's still really early, and we're still trying to figure out what the best balance is. But we're seeing options for developers to think of their audience as a non-playing audience first, and creating awesome interactive experiences for them. And it'll run an entire spectrum. So it's exciting days. I'm looking forward to what you guys and your developer partners do. Thank you very much.